The alien princess caught my scent and froze. She recalled the human who saved her. Its spires shimmered under the twin suns, and light reflected off the crystal walls in 1,000 colors. The city below was alive with ships gliding silently through the air, and the citizens walked with careful grace. But inside the palace, the air was quieter. It was a place of history, of memory, and of secrets that no visitor could ever guess. Princess Elira walked through the grand hall with calm, measured steps. Her robes shimmered like liquid silver, flowing behind her as she moved. She held herself with the dignity expected of a ruler, even though her heart was heavy with memories she could not share. Many saw her as strong and confident, but only she knew the quiet fear that once lingered inside her, long before she became a princess. Years ago, Elira had faced a danger that none in the palace could ever imagine. Her ship had crashed on a distant, hostile world at the edge of Zelari space. The surface was barren and cold, with jagged rocks and toxic storms. Elira had survived the crash, but she was injured, trapped, and alone. She had expected death to come swiftly, but it did not. A human soldier had appeared when she needed help the most. She had barely seen him at first. He had been just a shadow in the storm, moving with speed and precision. Yet even in that dangerous moment, there was a calm certainty in his movements. He reached her, ignoring the danger around them. Without a word, he pulled her from the wreckage, carrying her to safety over rocks and through bitter winds. Elira remembered the warmth of a small fire he had built, the care with which he cleaned her wounds, and the quiet words he spoke to keep her calm. "You will survive," he had said simply. "I will not let them take you." She had trusted him immediately, though she did not know why. His presence felt like hope itself. They had faced many dangers together: wild creatures that stalked the barren plains, sudden storms that could crush them, and even raiders who sought to capture or harm them. Through it all, the human never faltered. He fought with courage, with strength, and with a determination that seemed impossible. And when she thought he might be hurt or lost, he always returned, dragging her to safety again. Then came the final attack. Elira had been ready to face it with him, but he had disappeared into the chaos to create a distraction. She remembered screaming for him, calling his name, but the wind had swallowed her voice. By the time rescue ships arrived, he was gone. She had assumed he had died, like so many she had seen lost in the galaxy. She never forgot him, but she also never expected to see him again. Now, back in the palace, Elira's life was full of order and duty. She attended meetings with advisors, received diplomats from distant worlds, and learned the complex art of ruling. She had grown strong, respected, and feared, but a part of her heart still carried the memory of that human who had saved her life. She never spoke of him. Who could understand? In the palace, humans were often seen as fragile, short-lived creatures, not as heroes. One day, a message arrived from the central human fleet. It was a formal request. A delegation wished to meet the Zelari royal family. Elira listened quietly as her advisors discussed the arrival. Humans had not visited the Empire in decades, and their reputation was a mix of curiosity and caution. They were known for their ingenuity and unpredictability, but they were also seen as outsiders. "Princess," her chief advisor said, bowing deeply, "the humans request a diplomatic meeting. They wish to discuss trade and alliances." Elira nodded slowly. "Very well, prepare the hall. I will attend." She gave no hint of her true feelings. Deep inside, she felt a strange mix of curiosity and unease. Humans, she had known one once, one who had changed everything for her. When the day came, Elira walked into the grand hall. The walls were lined with glowing symbols of the Empire, and crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars from the ceiling. Aliens from distant worlds filled the room, their many forms shimmering with color and light. Elira's eyes scanned the crowd with careful precision, noting every gesture, every detail. And then she caught it. A scent drifted through the air, faint but unmistakable. It was the same scent she had remembered from that long-ago world, the sharp, clean smell of a human who had faced storms and fire without fear. Her body froze instantly, and her heart skipped a beat. Memories surged like a tidal wave. She remembered the firelight, the sound of his voice, the way he had looked at her with quiet determination. She could not believe it. Could it really be him, after all these years? The delegation entered the hall, led by a tall human officer. His uniform was neat, his posture confident. He spoke with clarity and calm, introducing his companions. Elira's mind raced. Every step he took, every word he spoke seemed to echo from her memories. She could not look away. The human officer paused, sensing eyes on him. Their gazes met for just a moment, and something passed between them, a spark of recognition that neither could deny. Her body trembled slightly, and she had to steady herself against a crystal pillar. He had survived. He had returned. The meeting continued, with diplomats exchanging words about trade, alliances, and politics, but Elira's mind was elsewhere. She watched him closely, trying to reconcile the years and distance with the man standing before her. He looked older than she remembered, but there was no doubt in her mind. It was him, the human who had saved her life. After the meeting, Elira found a quiet balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The suns were beginning to set, casting long shadows across the city. Her thoughts were a jumble of hope, fear, and disbelief. Could she approach him? Would he even remember her? She remembered the first night he had saved her. They had huddled by a fire, watching the strange stars of the barren world. He had said, "You must trust yourself. You are stronger than you think." Those words had carried her through countless trials in the palace, though she had never known he had spoken them to her in that moment. Now, as she watched the sunset, Elira felt a strange courage rising within her. She had survived storms, wars, and political intrigue, but this reunion with the human was something entirely different. She had to know if he remembered her. She had to see him again. She returned to the hall, her steps quiet but determined. The delegation was preparing to depart for their quarters, and Elira approached the human officer. He looked up as she drew near, and their eyes met once again. The recognition in his gaze was subtle but undeniable. "Princess Elira," he said, bowing slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." Elira's voice was steady, though her heart raced. "I remember you," she said softly. "You saved my life. I thought you were gone." The human's expression shifted, surprise, then something deeper, relief perhaps, or disbelief. "I survived," he said simply. "I never expected to see you again, but I am glad I have." For a long moment they stood in silence. Words were unnecessary. The memories of fire, danger, and quiet nights under alien stars were stronger than any words could be. Elira realized something profound. The universe was vast, full of unknowns and dangers, but somehow this human had endured. Somehow he had returned. The princess felt a quiet warmth in her chest. The memory that had lingered for years, the fear, the hope, the gratitude, was no longer just a memory. It was alive, present, and real. And though the palace was full of diplomats, advisors, and aliens from distant worlds, for that moment, it felt as if it was only the two of them again, standing together against the universe. Elira knew one thing clearly. The past was not forgotten, and heroes sometimes returned in ways no one expected. And the first part of her story, the part she had almost forgotten, was about to begin again. The palace corridors were quiet now, the bustle of diplomats and guards settling into their routines. But for Princess Elira, the quiet only amplified the storm of emotions inside her. She could still feel the presence of the human officer, a presence that seemed to echo through the hallways and even into the quiet spaces of her mind. The memory of his scent, the sharp, clean air of the barren world where he had saved her, haunted her, tugging at something deep within her heart. She walked alone toward the palace garden, the soft glow of the twin suns casting long golden shadows across the crystalline pathways. Her mind kept returning to that distant world where she had been so small, so helpless, and yet so protected. She could feel again the heat of the small fire he had built, the way he had spoken to her with calm certainty. She had survived because of him. She had learned trust and courage because of him. And now he was here. Elira's steps slowed as she thought of the delegation preparing to move through the palace. Every human in the group seemed ordinary to others, but she sensed something extraordinary in one of them. She could not mistake it. The air carried a faint reminder of that human, the one who had endured impossible odds to save her. Her body froze instinctively and her breath caught. The world seemed to shrink around her. She had to know if it was truly him. Meanwhile, the human officer, Commander Rylan, was unaware of the storm his presence had caused. He moved among the other aliens with careful courtesy, answering questions and offering explanations about his fleet, their missions, and their purpose. To others, he was simply another officer, calm, precise, professional. But for Elira, each movement, each word, was a reminder of the man who had once risked everything for her life. The delegation was led into the palace's central council chamber, a massive room filled with symbols of the Empire's power. Elira observed from her seat, careful not to reveal too much, but her gaze returned repeatedly to Commander Rylan. She noticed the way he carried himself, the quiet confidence in his movements, the subtle determination in his eyes. Everything about him was familiar, though the years had changed his face and form slightly. She remembered the small moments during the rescue, moments no one else could know. How he had built shelters with only the rocks and branches around them. How he had hunted strange, dangerous creatures to feed her. How he had shared quiet stories of his world, of humans, of survival, without expecting her to remember. And she remembered the final night before he disappeared, the moment he had promised without words that she would survive. Elira's hand rested lightly on the armrest of her chair as she fought to remain composed. She could feel her heart racing, her thoughts spinning. Could he really be alive after all these years? Could this man whom she had believed lost truly have returned to her? The council meeting began with formal introductions and polite exchanges. The Zelari advisors spoke of trade routes, of political alliances, and of interstellar cooperation. Commander Rylan responded with precise, measured words, explaining the humans' intentions and emphasizing trust and mutual benefit. Elira listened carefully, but her mind was elsewhere, tracing back every detail of that distant world, every moment that had led to this encounter. When a brief break in the meeting allowed delegates to move freely, Elira found herself moving toward the edge of the chamber. She kept her eyes on him, careful not to draw attention. Commander Rylan stood near a large holographic display, speaking quietly with one of his officers. Elira noticed the small gestures, the careful way he listened, the way he made decisions with thought and clarity. He had survived, and more than that, he had thrived. As she watched, she caught a familiar scent again, sharper this time. It reached her across the crowded room, unmistakable. Her body reacted instinctively, freezing in place. Memories from that world flooded back. The smell of dry rocks after rain, the fire smoke, the scent of him close by in the dark. Her mind raced as she tried to control the emotion threatening to break through her calm exterior. Finally, when the meeting ended and the other delegates began to leave, Elira took a deep breath and followed him quietly. She moved through the long palace corridors, silent as a shadow. She watched as he paused to glance at a map, his posture relaxed but alert. He did not notice her at first, but she felt the pull of memory growing stronger with every step. She remembered the first night he had saved her, huddled together under the alien stars. She had been cold, injured, and scared, yet he had remained calm, speaking softly, building a small fire to warm her. "You must keep moving," he had said, his voice firm but gentle. "The storm is not the end. You will survive." She had trusted him without question, though she had no reason to. Somehow she knew he would not fail her. Now that same presence was near. The years had changed him, but the essence of the man, the courage, the calm, the relentless determination, was still there. Elira's hands trembled slightly as she approached, and her heart raced faster than it had in decades. Commander Rylan finally noticed her. For a brief moment, his eyes widened slightly, and recognition flickered across his face. Elira stopped, unsure whether to speak, to move closer, or to remain hidden. She watched as his expression shifted from curiosity to surprise, then slowly to understanding. "Princess Elira," he said, his voice low and steady. "Is it really you?" Elira nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It is me. I thought you were gone." The human officer stepped closer, cautious but deliberate. "I survived," he said simply. "I never expected to see you again, but here you are." They stood together in silence, the world around them fading. Elira remembered the countless dangers they had faced on that barren world, the storms, the creatures, the raiders, and how he had carried her through them all. She realized how much she had grown since then, but also how much she owed to the human who had risked everything to save her. I remember everything," Elira said softly, her voice shaking slightly. "The fire, the nights, you saved my life. I never forgot you." Rylan's eyes held a quiet warmth. "I did what anyone would have done," he said. "But seeing you again, safe, alive, it means more than I can say." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two survivors from a harsh world reunited after years apart. The hall outside seemed distant and unimportant. The memory of danger and fear was still there, but it was mingled with relief and recognition. They had survived, and now they were together again. Elira finally found her voice. How did you survive? I thought it was impossible. Rylan smiled faintly. Humans endure, he said. We face fear, pain, and loss, but we keep going. I never thought I'd see you again, but I hoped. Hope kept me alive. Elira felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of gratitude, relief, and admiration. She had always known humans were clever and resilient, but seeing it firsthand in the one who had saved her life made it real. The stories of human endurance she had heard in the palace could not compare to this moment. They walked together through the palace corridors, speaking quietly. Elira asked questions about his journey, and he explained how he had escaped the hostile world, fought through dangers alone, and returned to human space. Each story was another proof of human determination and skill, and Elira listened with awe and respect. As they reached a quieter garden courtyard, Elira stopped and looked at him seriously. You changed my life, she said. I would not be here if it were not for you, and now I want to understand more. I want to know everything about you, about humans, about why you never gave up. Rylan looked at her and nodded. You will, but first, we must be careful. Not everyone in this palace will welcome what they see. Humans are different. Some may not understand what you see now. Elira understood immediately. She had lived in the palace for years, navigated politics, and known the whispers of doubt. But now she also realized that some truths were stronger than fear, and some bonds were unbreakable. She had found a friend, an ally, and perhaps something more, someone who had seen her at her weakest and had helped her survive. They spent the rest of the day walking through the gardens, sharing memories and cautious laughter. Elira felt a sense of relief she had not known for decades. The human was alive, the past was no longer lost, and the future, though uncertain, was filled with new possibilities. As the twin suns set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the palace, Elira realized that the story of the human who had saved her was far from over. The scent in the air, the memories it carried, and the presence of Commander Rylan were only the beginning of a new chapter, one that would challenge her, inspire her, and change her view of humans forever. The next morning, the palace was alive with movement. Couriers hurried along the crystal corridors, advisors debated in the council chambers, and soldiers drilled silently in the outer courtyards. But Princess Elira moved through the palace with a quiet focus, her mind fully occupied by the human officer, Commander Rylan. She had not been able to forget the way his eyes had recognized her, the calm determination that had carried him through impossible dangers, and the faint but unforgettable scent that reminded her of the barren world where he had saved her life. Today, she decided, she would understand fully who he was and how he had survived. Rylan, unaware of her plans, moved through the palace with his delegation. He had attended meetings the previous day, explained human technology and tactics, and answered countless questions. Yet throughout the day, he had felt the subtle awareness of eyes watching him, careful, deliberate, but curious. When he had glanced up, he saw Elira observing him quietly from a distance. Their eyes met, and a faint smile crossed his face. Later, when the palace hall emptied, Elira arranged a private meeting with him under the pretense of diplomacy. She led him to a quiet observation terrace that overlooked the city below. The twin suns glinted off distant towers, and the air was crisp and clean. Here, away from the crowd, they could speak freely. Commander Rylan, Elira began, her voice steady but soft. I need to know, how did you survive? I thought I had lost you that day on the barren world. Rylan took a deep breath. His gaze swept across the city before meeting hers. It was difficult, he said. The storms were violent, the terrain unforgiving. I faced creatures and raiders that should have ended me, but I remembered you. I remembered your fear and the promise I made. I could not fail you, not then and not now. Elira listened closely, absorbing every word. She could imagine the harsh winds, the jagged rocks, the endless danger. And she understood then what she had never fully realized before. Humans, even alone, were relentless. They endured what others could not, persevered where others would have failed, and never gave up when it mattered most. Your people, she said carefully, they are called fragile by many in my empire. They say humans cannot survive in the galaxy alone. Rylan's eyes gleamed with quiet confidence. We may seem fragile, but we endure. We adapt. The galaxy teaches us that fear is a tool, not a chain. I survived because I had to, not because it was easy. Elira felt a mixture of awe and admiration. She had known humans could be clever, but she had never realized the depth of their resilience until now. She thought back to the nights by the fire when he had built shelter with nothing but rocks and branches, hunted for food in harsh conditions, and kept her calm when every moment was terrifying. "You were remarkable," she said softly. "Even now, seeing you here, I cannot believe the courage it must have taken to survive." Rylan shook his head, smiling faintly. "I did what anyone would have done, but perhaps I was lucky. The universe can be cruel, but it also has a way of giving second chances." They walked slowly along the terrace, the city stretching endlessly below them. Elira wanted to ask more about his journey, the choices he had made, and the moments he had faced alone. She felt a quiet urgency, a need to understand the full story of the human who had risked everything for her life. "You fought alone," she said. "How did you keep going?" Ryland's expression darkened slightly, remembering the nights alone on the barren world. "It was not easy. The nights were long, the storms were constant. I had no one to rely on except my training and the memory of you. Every time I thought I could not go on, I remembered your eyes, your fear, and I knew I had to keep moving. I had to survive so that your sacrifice, your trust in me, would not be in vain." Elira felt tears prick at her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She had been saved not only by his strength but by his unwavering will. She realized that her view of humans, shaped by centuries of empire-wide assumptions, had been incomplete. Humans were not fragile. They were resilient, courageous, and capable of facing impossible odds. "And now," Elira said carefully, "you are here among us, in the palace." "Safe," Rylan nodded. "Yes, safe, but also aware. I have seen what humans can endure, and I have seen what others assume about us. They may doubt our strength, but we have proof where it counts." Elira's heart pounded. She wanted to speak of the past, of the fire, of the nights they had spent together hiding and surviving. She wanted to tell him how much she had thought of him over the years, how his courage had guided her even in the palace, even in political meetings and battles she had faced alone. "I never stopped thinking of you," she admitted softly. "Even when I became a princess, even when I thought I was strong, I remembered you, and I needed to see you again to know that you lived." Ryland's gaze softened. "And now you do, I am here, alive, and I see you too, strong, determined, and no longer alone in your memories." They spent hours on the terrace, recounting stories from that world, speaking of survival, strategy, and the lessons humans had learned in the galaxy. Elira asked questions about Ryland's journey back to human space, about the dangers he had faced, and about the ways he had adapted to impossible odds. Every answer deepened her respect and admiration. She realized more clearly than ever that humans were not defined by their size or lifespan. They were defined by their courage, their resilience, and their ability to endure. Rylan was living proof of all of that. As the suns dipped behind the horizon, casting a warm glow across the city, Elira finally spoke of her own journey. She told him about the years in the palace, the responsibilities she had carried, and the fears she had faced as a leader. She admitted that she had sometimes doubted herself, even with all the training and guidance she had received. But through it all, the memory of his courage had guided her. "You reminded me what it means to endure," she said softly. "You reminded me that survival is not just about strength, but about will, about determination, about refusing to give up even when everything seems lost." Rylan nodded, understanding her meaning. "That is what humans do," he said. "We face what seems impossible and we keep going, and sometimes we find people worth saving along the way." The two of them fell into a quiet silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. For Elira, it was a moment of profound clarity. The human who had saved her life was alive. He was here, strong and capable, and their bond, formed in the fire of danger and survival, was real once again. Yet even in this quiet moment, Elira knew that their reunion could not remain hidden. The palace was full of advisors, diplomats, and alien leaders who would not all understand the significance of their bond. Some might even see it as a threat, a challenge to tradition, or a disruption to established power. She took a deep breath. "We must be careful," she said. "Not everyone will understand what you mean to me, to my life. Some may question why a human matters, why you survived, and why you are here." Ryland's gaze met hers, steady and calm. "Then we proceed carefully," he said, "but we do not hide the truth. The truth has its own strength, and sometimes strength changes everything." Elira nodded, a renewed determination filling her heart. She had survived storms, political intrigue, and alien conspiracies. And now she would face the challenge of integrating this human into her life and into the palace's careful order. But she no longer feared the challenge. She had seen the courage humans could possess, and she had seen it in him, the one who had saved her life. As the night deepened, they finally parted, returning to their respective duties, but carrying with them the memory of the reunion. Elira knew that the human presence in the palace was more than a curiosity. It was a symbol of endurance, courage, and the bonds that could form even across worlds. And she knew that the story of survival, trust, and recognition was only beginning. The bond between her and Commander Rylan would not fade again. It was a thread woven by courage, strengthened by time, and tested by the universe itself. The palace was quiet, but within its walls, a quiet revolution of trust, admiration, and recognition had begun. Elira had confirmed that humans were not fragile. She had seen their resilience, their skill, and their courage firsthand. And she had witnessed the human who would not break, who had endured where others would have fallen, and who had returned to her life against all odds. The future was uncertain. The galaxy was vast and full of danger. But Elira now knew that with humans like Rylan, she could face the challenges ahead with confidence. They were more than survivors. They were proof that courage and determination could endure even in the harshest of worlds. And so, as the stars shimmered above the palace, Elira and Rylan carried with them a quiet, unspoken understanding. The past had returned, and the future would never be the same. The following days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and careful observation of the human. Delegation. Yet for Princess Elira, the presence of Commander Rylan changed everything. She moved through the palace with a quiet confidence, aware that the man who had once saved her life now stood not only as a human representative, but also as a symbol of resilience that no one in the Zelari Empire could ignore. Rylan, too, was adjusting to the strange rhythm of the palace. While humans and Zelari often spoke of alliance, trust, and diplomacy, he understood that he was more than a representative. He was a living proof of human endurance. His story, the story of survival on a hostile world, was a lesson that the Zelari leaders had yet to understand fully, and he intended to make them see it carefully without angering the court. Elira arranged another private meeting with Rylan in the observation garden, a space of tall crystalline trees and glowing flowers that shimmered under the twin suns. It was a place of calm, away from the bustle of the palace. The moment she saw him waiting, she felt the same rush of memory as before, the firelight, the wind, the sound of his voice encouraging her to survive. "You are remarkable," she said quietly, her eyes studying his face. "I have seen many humans in my life, but none like you." "You survived the impossible," Rylan smiled faintly. "It was not impossible. I had a reason to live, and that reason was you. I would have faced the universe itself to keep you safe. I did not expect to be recognized or remembered, but here we are." Elira took a deep breath. "I remember every moment of that day, the fire, the wind, the fear, and how you never gave up. You taught me courage without knowing it, and now I want to honor that." Rylan looked at her carefully. "Honor. Princess, you have already done that by surviving, by leading, and by remembering. That is more than any reward I could ask for." She shook her head. "No, this is more than memory. I want others to understand, too. I want the Council to see what humans can do, how they endure, and how they never give up even in the harshest conditions." Rylan considered her words, understanding the weight of what she proposed. To openly recognize a human in the Zelari Empire was not a small gesture. Some leaders would see it as unconventional, even dangerous. But Elira's determination was clear. She was no longer a frightened girl on a barren world. She was a princess, a leader, and someone who could change the perception of an entire species. Later that day, she called a council meeting. The chamber was grand, filled with advisors, ambassadors, and delegates from distant worlds. Every seat was occupied, and the air buzzed with curiosity and expectation. Elira's presence was commanding. She moved to the center, her robes flowing, and all eyes turned toward her. "Honored council members," she began, her voice calm but firm. "Today I wish to speak of an event that changed my life. Many years ago, I faced certain death on a world at the edge of our empire. I was saved by a human, a member of the species often underestimated and misunderstood. That human survived against impossible odds, and his courage saved not only my life but also gave me the strength to continue. Today, that human stands among us." A murmur ran through the room. Some advisors leaned forward, curious, others frowned in disbelief. A human standing in the palace, openly recognized by the princess? It was unprecedented. Rylan stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect. "Honored council members, I am Commander Rylan of the human fleet. My mission is to serve as a representative of my people, but I am also here to bear witness to what humans are capable of. We endure, we persevere, and we face dangers that many cannot survive. I stand here today not as a hero, but as proof of that resilience." Elira watched the council members carefully. Some faces were skeptical, others surprised. Few could deny the quiet confidence in Ryland's voice, the calm in his eyes, or the unspoken truth in his presence. He was not just speaking of courage, he was living it. "Your survival is extraordinary," one senior advisor said finally, his tone cautious. "But why is this important to the Empire?" Elira stepped closer, her voice strong. "Because strength is not measured only in power or weapons. It is measured in courage, in endurance, in the ability to face impossible odds and continue. Humans may seem fragile, but they are resilient. Commander Ryland's actions prove that. His survival is not just a personal triumph, it is a lesson for all of us." The council chamber was silent. Some members whispered among themselves, questioning, doubting, yet unable to ignore the truth in Elira's words. She turned her gaze to Rylan, and he nodded subtly, understanding her unspoken message. This was their moment to shift perception, carefully, with dignity and truth. Later, Elira and Rylan walked together through the palace gardens. The suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Elira felt a strange calm as she spoke. "I have always led my people with duty, with care, and with caution, but now I see that courage is something deeper. It is not just strength or strategy, it is the willingness to face danger and survive against all odds." Rylan listened quietly. "Humans have learned that lesson over countless generations. Fear is a tool, but willpower is the key. We survive not because it is easy, but because we must. And sometimes, survival is about protecting others, about keeping hope alive for someone else." Elira nodded, realizing how much she had carried his lesson with her, even without knowing it. Every decision she had made in the palace, every act of leadership, every moment of courage had been inspired by that memory. And now, standing beside him, she felt a bond stronger than before, a bond formed in fire, tested by storms, and reaffirmed in trust. "Commander," she said softly, "your presence here changes everything, not just for me but for the entire Empire. Humans have been underestimated for too long. You are proof that courage and resilience know no bounds." Rylan smiled faintly. "Then let us show them together. Carefully, wisely, but without hiding the truth." The following days saw subtle changes in the palace. Advisors and diplomats noticed Elira's renewed confidence, her openness, and her unwavering support for Rylan. The human officer was no longer just a visitor. He became a symbol. He was invited to strategy discussions, consulted on survival tactics, and even asked for advice on interstellar diplomacy. Yet even as they grew closer, Elira and Rylan knew the path ahead would not be simple. Some leaders resisted, clinging to old assumptions and fearing change. Others were curious, eager to learn what made humans so resilient. And beneath it all, the galaxy continued to hold unknown dangers, dangers that neither princess nor human could predict. One evening, as they walked through a quiet terrace under the stars, Elira spoke candidly. "Rylan, I know some in the council do not trust you. They see humans as outsiders, fragile and unpredictable. How do we convince them?" Rylan considered her question carefully. "We do not force them to believe," he said. "We show them. Humans endure, humans survive, and humans honor their promises. Let them see the truth through action, not words. That is the strongest proof of all." Elira nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. She realized that leadership was not just about making decisions. It was about showing courage, inspiring trust, and demonstrating truth through action. And with Rylan by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The stars above shimmered, casting a soft light over the palace gardens. Elira felt a deep sense of clarity and purpose. The past had returned to guide the present, and together, she and the human who had saved her life were ready to face the future. The bond between them, forged in the fires of survival and tested by time, was now unbreakable. And as they looked out over the city, the quiet promise of a new chapter in the Zelari Empire unfolded before them. A chapter defined not by fear or tradition, but by courage, trust, and the enduring strength of humans. The palace was alive with anticipation. Word had spread quickly through the council and across the city that the human delegation, led by Commander Rylan, had earned the recognition of Princess Elira herself. Curiosity, admiration, and a touch of apprehension filled the air. This was unprecedented, a human openly honored and trusted within the highest halls of the Zelari Empire. Elira moved through the corridors with quiet confidence. Her robes shimmered softly in the morning sun as she approached the council chamber. Today, she would make a decision that could change the course of history. She had spent days observing, listening, and speaking with Rylan. She had seen his courage, intelligence, and the quiet strength that had once saved her life. Now it was time to share that with the Empire. As she entered the chamber, the council members rose in respect. Some faces were curious, others skeptical, and a few clearly uneasy. Elira raised her hand, and the room fell silent. Her eyes scanned the assembly before settling on Commander Rylan, standing confidently near the center of the chamber. "Honored council members," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today I wish to speak not only of alliances or trade, but of truth, courage, and resilience. Many of you have doubted the strength of humans. You have seen them as outsiders, fragile and short-lived. Today I will show you that this is not so." A murmur ran through the room. Some council members exchanged cautious glances, but Elira continued without hesitation. "Years ago, I faced death on a barren world far from this palace. I was trapped, injured, and alone. And I was saved by a human, one whose courage and determination went beyond anything I had ever witnessed. That human survived dangers that would have ended most lives, endured impossible odds, and returned to stand before me today. His name is Commander Rylan." Rylan stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Honored council members, I am Commander Rylan. I speak today not as a hero, but as proof of what humans can endure. We face challenges, we adapt, and we persevere. Our strength is not only in battle or technology, but in our will to survive and protect those we care for. Princess Elira can attest to that." Silence filled the chamber as the council absorbed her words. Some members were visibly impressed, while others remained skeptical, clinging to old prejudices. But Elira did not falter. She had prepared for this moment, and her confidence was unwavering. "Commander Rylan's actions changed my life," Elira continued. "They also changed my understanding of courage, loyalty, and endurance. Humans are not fragile, are resilient. They face the impossible and keep going. And today, I declare that humans are to be trusted allies of the Zelari Empire. Their courage and skill are to be recognized, respected, and valued." A mixture of surprise and admiration rippled through the room. Some council members whispered to one another, questioning the implications. Others nodded slowly, realizing the truth in Elira's words. The recognition of human resilience was no longer a secret. It was a statement of fact, made by the princess herself. Rylan's presence exuded calm confidence. He answered questions with precision, explaining human methods, survival strategies, and the ways they adapted to unpredictable dangers. He spoke not with arrogance, but with clarity and honesty. Slowly, the council began to understand what Elira had known all along. Humans were not weak. They were extraordinary in ways that could inspire the Empire. After the council meeting, Elira and Rylan walked through the palace gardens. The twin suns cast long shadows across the crystalline paths, and the air was filled with the soft hum of alien flora. Elira felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. The first step had been taken. Humans were no longer just outsiders. They were respected, acknowledged, and valued. "Today was important," Elira said quietly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Not only for the humans, but for the Empire itself. Change is never easy, but it is necessary. And you, Rylan, you showed everyone what courage truly means." Rylan smiled faintly. "You showed them too, Princess. Without your support, your recognition, this would not have been possible. Humans endure, yes, but we also need allies who see the truth, who understand resilience, and who are willing to act on it." Elira nodded, feeling the weight of her responsibility. "We will face challenges," she said. "Some will doubt, some will resist, and some may even fear the change. but with truth, courage, and perseverance we will overcome. And together, humans and the Zelari can build a stronger future. Days passed, and the palace slowly adjusted to the new reality. Human officers were consulted on strategic decisions, their knowledge of survival and adaptability proving invaluable. Elira and Rylan continued to spend time together, strengthening their bond while also teaching others the lessons of endurance, trust, and courage. One evening, as the sun set in the violet sky, Elira and Rylan stood on a terrace overlooking the city. The lights of the palace glowed softly, reflecting off the crystalline towers. Elira turned to him, her expression serious but calm. "Rylan, the Council has accepted humans as allies, but there is still work to be done," she said. "There will always be those who resist, who doubt, who fear. Our task is to show them through action, not words. To prove that courage, loyalty, and endurance are stronger than prejudice and fear." Rylan nodded. "I understand, and I am ready. Humans endure, we adapt, we survive, and we protect those who matter. Together we can show the Empire what that truly means." A sense of quiet determination settled over them. They had faced storms, hostile worlds, and impossible odds. They had survived dangers that would have ended lesser beings. And now, standing together in the heart of the Empire, they were ready to shape the future. In the following weeks, Elira and Rylan worked closely with the Council. They trained officers, shared strategies, and demonstrated human endurance through simulations and exercises. Slowly, skepticism turned into respect and doubt into admiration. The Empire began to recognize the value of humans, not just as allies, but as equals in courage and strength. One day, a message arrived from a distant sector, reporting a crisis on a border planet. A sudden storm had stranded settlers, and the local forces were struggling to provide aid. Elira and Rylan acted immediately, coordinating a rescue mission. Humans and Zelari worked side by side, combining skill, strategy, and endurance. The settlers were saved, the storm managed, and the operation succeeded beyond expectation. The success of the mission sent a clear message to the entire Empire. Humans were not only resilient but indispensable. Their ability to endure, adapt, and act decisively had changed perceptions forever. Elira watched with quiet pride as Rylan led the human forces, calm and confident, demonstrating the very lessons she had learned so many years ago on that barren world. Later that evening, the palace held a celebration. Council members, diplomats, and citizens gathered to honor the success of the rescue mission and to recognize the bravery of humans. Elira stood beside Rylan as speeches were made, and the room erupted in applause. She realized that the bond forged between them, once a secret memory of survival, had grown into a symbol of trust, courage, and unity between species. As the festivities continued, Elira turned to Rylan, her expression warm. "You have changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me, but for all of us. The Empire now sees what I have known all along. Humans endure, humans are courageous, and humans are friends we can rely on." Rylan smiled. "And you have shown them, Elira. You have led with courage, with wisdom, and with trust. Together we have done something remarkable, and this is only the beginning." The twin suns set beyond the horizon, casting a golden glow across the palace. Elira and Rylan stood side by side, looking out at the city and the stars beyond. They had faced impossible odds, survived against dangers that would have destroyed lesser beings, and built a bond that would endure across worlds. The Empire had witnessed human courage, and the princess had fully trusted the man who had saved her life. Their story, once a secret memory of survival, had become a living example of what could be achieved through trust, courage, and perseverance. And as the stars shimmered above, Elira knew one thing for certain: the future would never be the same. Humans and the Zelari working together could face any challenge the galaxy might hold. And for Elira, the memory of that first rescue, the fire, the storm, the courage, was no longer just a past event. It was a guiding light, a promise, and a beginning. The Empire, once cautious and skeptical, had learned the truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were resilient. Humans were allies, friends, and symbols of hope. And Princess Elira, standing beside the human who had changed her life, smiled quietly. She had survived, she had grown, and she had witnessed the return of a hero. Together, they would face the galaxy, shaping a future built on courage, trust, and enduring strength. The story of survival, recognition, and alliance had come full circle. From a barren world to the grand halls of the palace, the bond between Elira and Rylan proved one undeniable truth. Courage and perseverance can change the course of history, one life and one alliance at a time.